Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. So I have gotten a lot of requests about this video, and it's a couple days old now. I'm finally getting around to giving my take on it because people asked what my opinion was with me being an actual police officer. So I know you guys have probably seen the video. This is the Tempe, Arizona drowning of the 34-year-old man, Sean Bickings, who is a homeless man. The police have been called out there for a disturbance between him and his girlfriend, and then ultimately he is seen jumping into the water and going for a swim, and then he ultimately drowned. There's a lot of backlash about this because they're saying that the officers did nothing. They just stood by and let him drown, and now there's uproar and there's protests in that area and some stuff like that. So I'm going to go ahead and play parts of the video for you, and I want to break down a few portions of it from my perspective to give a little bit of an overall stance, I guess, and to see where these people who are complaining about this, one thing this job is turning into that I found here recently is you're literally damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. Plain and simple, like you cannot win. And 1 minute you're violating somebody's rights, they're not detained, they're free to go. And then the next minute, why didn't you do something? Why didn't you go put your hands on that person and save them from their own dumb decision? So it's like you literally cannot win. So let's jump into the first part of this video where the officers walk up and they start talking to the girlfriend. And there's a key point here that I'll show you when we get to it of what they ask her. So let's get into that.
Hi.
I'm sorry.
What's going on?
I was just having a conversation.
Okay, I can't understand what you're saying when you're looking down and mumbling.
I'm just having a little bit of conversating issues with my husband and stuff. But it's all good. I'm just frustrated because he doesn't.
Okay, did you guys get into a physical confrontation?
No, nothing like that. No.
Okay.
All right, so right there, if you heard that, he specifically says, did you guys get into a physical confrontation? All right. For us as law enforcement officers, one of the first goals or early on goals that we'll be trying to obtain when we go and start asking questions is, why are we there? Is there a criminal element that we need to potentially take enforcement action on? And the reason that we do that is because that is the huge dividing line of whether or not we can force ourselves upon anybody, give actual commands or orders that they have to obey, and if they don't, they would be subject to arrest for not listening. Or is this some sort of a civil matter, a squabble, or whatever it may be, to where we actually have no legal authority to enforce or push anything upon people? So you see, he asks us right in the beginning to determine what they have to work with. All right, so right here, they gather her basic information. Once again, this is standard protocol for anybody that we get out with. We get basic name, date of birth, and then typically are going to do a wants or warrants check on the people to see if there are any outstanding warrants. Not everybody does it, but it is a pretty standard protocol. So we, again, ask, and if they give us the information, then we'll do it to see, and ultimately you're going to find out this guy had warrants. There's a reason we do this. We don't just do it for fun. You'd be surprised how many people out there in the world have actual warrants for their arrest and either know it and are trying to avoid it, or have no idea they have it, or we've had prior dealings with the people. I know with the transients in our area a lot, they get issued notice to appears or tickets for drinking in the park, things like that, and they never show up to court. They don't. So we know usually within a couple weeks they have a warrant, so it's usually a round robin type thing. You just continually check until that next warrant pops up, and then they get arrested and they go to jail. All right, so here during this time, they've gotten his information, they're running him for the warrants, they're waiting for the results to come back, and they're just having general conversation with him. They've already determined as to the point no crime has occurred, so there's really not any other enforcement action that's going to take place. The officer's even heard saying that he'll get him out of here in just a minute.
Where?
Here, right here. Right there.
So right here at this point, the other officer turns around again. There's not really anything going on, probably thinking nothing of it. And then all of a sudden, the guy decides to go ahead and climb over the rail and starts shimming down the concrete embankment.
What are you doing?
I gotta go for a swim. Right, I'm free to go, right? You can't swim in the lake, man. I'm free to go, right?
You're not allowed to swim in the lake.
Really?
All right, so at this point, he just says he's going to go for a swim, and he even says, I'm free to go, right? He knows there's no criminal investigation going on here. The officers know there's no criminal investigation going on here. The jumping in the lake and swimming, even though not allowed, is just a civil ticket in that area, so there's really no other enforcement action that can be taken by it. So this brings me to the point that I made earlier. When they went and they talked to the girlfriend half to try and determine if there was a crime or not, they determined that there was not. They confirmed that by talking to him, and the gentleman even says, I'm free to go, right? He is 100% free to go. This is where we get into the realm of frustration on law enforcement side, because like I said, any other case, if they had stopped him, if they had tried to grab him before he jumped over the railing or put their hands on him or done anything else, and God forbid something bad happened during that time, you would have an outcry of all these people that say, we violated his rights, we had no right to touch him, this was a civil matter, the police are pushing their authority on him and they had no right to. So here we do everything right. We let the man go. We don't escalate the situation or make it any worse than it needs to be. We did everything right. And then at this point, Mr. Bickings swims off. And you can see here, he is swimming away. It doesn't look like he's having any sort of issues. He has willingly got into the water, and that's that. You could see the officers, they're just standing there because they're kind of dumbfounded of like, well, we really can't do anything about this. So they're standing around. And to be honest with you, my conclusion of this entire situation, and I have a few other things I want to talk about, the only thing I think that they did wrong in this situation is they didn't just leave. At that point, if we had no more enforcement action, now granted, this is a touchy thing because he has a warrant, so technically you have a wanted person that's out there who ultimately needs to be arrested, but if you were to take that portion out of it, essentially you don't have anything to enforce. Like you said, at this point, we're definitely not going to jump in the water to try and apprehend this person. So in my opinion, the only thing that they did wrong here is they didn't just leave the area. They should have turned around, gotten in their cars, and gone 10-8 and been done with it. Now, the remainder of the video doesn't show anything. The police department didn't release the part of the man actually drowning for sensitivity reasons, so there's no other video other than what you see here. Something I do want to point out, this is a downtown like scenic area from all the looks of it. You have this catwalk, this bridge that goes across here. So far, I have not seen a single life ring. Now, I know in my area, most places where there's any sort of body of water like that, there's usually life rings or safety rings mounted along the railing to where if somebody fell in, you'd be able to toss a life ring to somebody. So you don't see anything like that in the area. All right, so now just a couple days after that incident, they had a city council meeting where they're talking about budgetary issues, and there were people that showed up outside to start protesting. Here's a short news clip. I'm going to play it because I want you guys to watch this. I want you to hear some of the things that they are saying and to just see how hypocritical it is when you really think about how they complain on one hand of us are not supposed to when we're violating somebody's rights because they are free to go. They are not detained. Yet in this case, we're being ridiculed for not doing enough.
Yeah, the aftermath of the police response at Tempe town Lake Katy is still on the minds of many. Community members and activists gathered outside chambers tonight. They rallied during the board meeting, and they are calling for change. They are saying that any additional funding for the city should go toward other resources and not the police department. Mimi Araya and other members of the local activist groups gathering outside Tempe's city council chambers Thursday. The groups demanded the city block the budget, defund police, and improve community resources.
We keep finding ourselves yelling into the void of city bureaucracy to stop killing us, stop facilitating our death, stop encouraging our destruction with your inaction.
Okay, let's stop here for just a second. Tell me where out of those three things that she just said that we have done. What does that have to do with this situation? It has nothing to do with this situation. Nothing about the officer's actions did anything to facilitate or create a situation that caused this man's death.
The Tempe Police Union says their officers do not have water rescue training or have the equipment to help.
All right, so the response from the police department, what you just heard, is absolutely accurate. my department and I work in a water community, a beach town, we have water all over this area. We are not provided any kind of water rescue training. It is not part of our normal duties. We have a Marine unit. The people who are on the Marine unit have some training when it comes to that, but they are also equipped with life jackets, ropes, life rings, other life-saving devices to where they can aid those people. Even the Marine unit, the officers on the boat are not jumping in the water with these people, plain and simple. We are not trained for that sort of water rescue. If any of you have been in the water, you know what it takes to swim on your own. Now, as a police officer, imagine we're wearing roughly 20 to 25 pounds of gear that does not float, okay? So now imagine jumping in the water with a 25-pound weight around your body, and then add shoes into the mix. A lot of people don't take credit for this. I don't know, when was the last time you went swimming with shoes on? I want you to let me know in the comments below if you've ever done that, and if you haven't, you should try it because it is an eye-opening experience. It is much, much harder to stay afloat when you don't have the use of your toes and can actually get a little propulsion with them when you're doing it. So now you expect an officer who is fully uniformed with all of this gear on. In order, if we even wanted to get in the water, you have to take all of this stuff off, okay? You cannot jump in the water with it. You will drown almost immediately. There are water safety classes you can go to for officers like Marine units that show you that there are ways around it, but you're never going to do that and save a person, even if you could keep yourself afloat. So now you have to take all of your gear off, all right? One, for the weight, two, for the mere fact of this equipment, the radios, the taser, all this stuff is thousands of dollars, all right? Now, I'm not saying somebody's life isn't worth a couple $1,000s that's on your vest. However, you can't just jump in the water with this stuff on. So it has to be removed one way or another for those two reasons, okay? Now, if you're in a situation like these officers were, let's say you even take off your vest and your gun belt, okay? That stuff has to be secured somewhere. So either now you have to run back to your car, wherever that is, and lock it up and secure it, or you have to task another officer on scene with holding all of your gear. So now let's say you do that. Now that officer is sort of down and out because they are no longer able to function the way they should be able to function. I know a lot of these are what if type scenarios, but all of this stuff comes into play because things in life have happened creating these types of training and protocol. So like I said, let's say I take my belt off, I take my vest off, I hand it all to my partner. They're holding all my gear, all right? Now let's say crazy girlfriend comes over and starts attacking them or something else happens. They can no longer defend themselves. They can no longer do what they need to do. They can't pull their own weapon out. They can't pull their own taser out or anything. They are now solely responsible for all of this gear that they're carrying because there are weapons on it. And if it were to be put on the ground or got in the hands of somebody else, just imagine the liability that would be involved with that. So that's like one of the first and foremost things. Now you run into the area where, let's say you got all of that off. Now you're expected to have somebody who is a strong enough swimmer that can go out, swim out to this person who is essentially drowning, who's panicking and is going to pull you down to try and keep their head above water and now be able to rescue them and bring them back. Listen, it sounds great on paper. Everybody wants to be a hero and think it's as simple as just jumping in the water and saving this person, but it just isn't. It's a fact of life. In fact, today, you know what? I was too lazy to set up the green screen. My office is a mess. Bear with me, but today is a facts and feelings t-shirt because unfortunately the facts of this case are what the reality is. It doesn't have anything to do with anybody's feelings, okay? There was an interview that I saw on one of the news stations where they had the family's attorney, okay? So now, mind you, this family, all right, who doesn't care enough about their son to let him into their home, maybe help him, aid him. He's homeless, okay? He lives on the street. All of his worldly possessions are in that pile that were standing behind the officer. So he has a family now who is so distraught over this and so upset that they are suing because of what happened. Meanwhile, they weren't involved enough in his life to help him out or make it at least so he wasn't homeless, but now you're going to sue because of what we did. To me, that just seems kind of screwed up. Anyway, back to my original point. The attorney for the family threw in a scenario in there that said, well, I would like to see if it was one of their brothers or sisters in blue that had gone under the water, what would they have jumped in to save him? Likely so. And to that I say, well, what if your kid fell in the water or your spouse fell in the water? Listen, there are a lot of very specific situations where you're willing to risk your own life to save a loved one, okay? We all know that's out there, but this man is a stranger to them. And let's go back to the other argument, and I've had people in my comments when I try to justify, hey, why we went to do a welfare check or why we went to help somebody, and they were in the comment, the Supreme Court has already ruled you don't have a duty to protect, you had no reason to be there, you had no reason to touch him. So on one hand, they want to say that the Supreme Court has ruled, it says we have no obligation to protect, but meanwhile, these people want to sue and protest saying we didn't do enough. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, you absolutely just cannot win in this profession anymore. You're the punching bag of everybody's feelings if it doesn't fit what they like or see fit for that type of situation. Now, another point to this, I also feel that this situation is very different than somebody falling into the water, somebody that did not end up in the water under their own power, their own decision to do so. Yes, if a kid fell over that railing, I'm going to take my gear off. I'm going to jump in and try to save them. They can't help themselves. They have no idea what happened. It's an accident. And I'd say the same for most adults as well. It's a different scenario when somebody is the victim of a situation, a victim of an accident, a fall, something like that. This man jumped into the water on his own free will and swam off. He is even heard saying, I'm just going to go for a swim. You can disagree with me, but I personally think that changes the scope of this situation drastically as to what kind of resources and what kind of response goes into the risk to now have to go save him because of a poor decision that he made.
They say they listen to us and turn around and spend $2.5 million to unfreeze 19 new police positions.
Oh, God forbid that they hire 19 more police officers so they can actually go out and help the community and do things. I don't understand the logic or the mindset of these people, why they think that that's a bad thing. Again, somebody like that, that means they have to think in their mind that 19 more police officers on the road are literally 19 more bad apples that are just going to go out and oppress and attack and kill innocent people. I mean, that has to be their mentality, because if not, then who wouldn't want more protective services or police services out in the world if people need it?
Voices of the community carried from the outside to the inside.
They directly told him they were not going to help him. They heard him say he was drowning.
In front of counselors who weighed approving millions of dollars to hire about 20 more police officers. The groups instead want funding to be spent on food and backyard garden programs in Tempe's lower income areas and permanent mental health counselors for local middle schools.
Okay, food and backyard programs and mental health counselors for middle schoolers, that's what they want the money spent on? At no point has anybody said in this thing, hey, how about we give the police some water rescue training? How about we go install a bunch of life rings at that walkway? How about we have a John boat or some sort of water apparatus that can be stationed by the seawall over there for in cases of emergencies? No, their requests have nothing to do with anything that actually means something when it comes to the safety or well-being of the public, which is what their complaint is that officers did not do their jobs, that by our inaction, we're letting the public die. But you want gardens in backyards of inner city neighborhoods. I don't see the correlation. I'm not saying that those are bad things, but if this is the argument and the forum that you're going to use for asking for this, it doesn't seem like it makes sense to me. I could be wrong. I want to know what you guys think in the comments down below. All right, you guys, that's where I'm going to wrap this video up. This is my take on it. I know a lot of it was rambling. Hopefully you stuck through here to the end. I do genuinely want to know, what do you guys think of this situation? Did the officers do anything wrong? I personally don't think so. Myself, as an officer, being in situations like that, I know what is practical and what is safe. And there's a big difference between complete inaction and doing nothing and not being able to do over-the-top, immediate type stuff. you'll hear in the thing, or they even said in the thing, they did call for a boat. They called for the resources that they have available to them. But beyond that, there's short of them jumping into the water, there was nothing else that they could do there on scene. I genuinely want to know, what do you guys think of this situation? Let me know in the comments down below. Did they do anything wrong? And what do you think should have been done different? What do you think the officers should have done? And with that being said, I want to leave you with this one thought. If you think that the officers should have jumped in the water, I want to know, would you have jumped in the water given the same circumstances? You have to remember, just because we're police officers does not mean we have some sort of superpowers or super abilities than anybody else that are out there in the world. Some of us are strong swimmers. Some of us may not know how to swim at all. So I want you to keep that in mind when you say so easily that the officer should have jumped in the water. Would you have jumped in the water to save this man yourself? All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed that little bit of insight of what I had to say about that. I'll have a new patrol vlog / breakdown coming out later this week. In the meantime, if there's any other footage or body cam that you've seen out there that you want me to give my take as a law enforcement officer on or do a breakdown on, feel free to email it to me or send it to me DMs through Instagram. I have links for all of that stuff down below in the show notes. All right, guys, until the next video, I want you to take really good care of yourselves and stay safe out there.